The very first page of One Piece feels appropriately grand. The image of a powerful man smiling with his neck on the executioner's blade, comforted by the infectious dream of treasure. The inspirational words that rang out turned children across the globe into aspiring pirates. I haven't gone public with this fact yet, but I've been reading One Piece. I binged a great seinen manga, and I decided I wanted a good shonen, so I figured why not go straight to the big boy. I'm not going to get into why I didn't watch it alongside Naruto and Bleach in this video, but I have already come to love this series as much as I knew that I would. People have asked me, is it worth the hype? To One Piece fans, this question is baffling because the series is heat from the first chapter. Today, let's talk about One Piece's favorite trick. This video is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends. Hoodie often pokes fun at me for playing too many phone games. But the joke's on him, because this video is brought to you by the world's biggest, best, and most badass mobile game, Raid Shadow Legends. Basically, as soon as I finished this script, I just handed the audio off to Hoodie and spent the next 2 days grinding XP. It's got 13 playable factions, but I started with the High Elves. And here's my current team. Okay, so the High Elves are classic good guys. Mostly. They live in their walled kingdom of Arabia. Typical humanoid elves you're used to seeing. Their queen is a powerful sorceress, and they do fight evil, but the problem is, it's not always clear whose side they're on. To find out more, you'll have to meet them in a story campaign. But if you're like me, you don't care about the surprisingly sophisticated plot that Raid's thankless writing staff has spent years perfecting. You just want to know if the gameplay is fun. And it is fun. Many of you know I'm a fan of strategy games, and this game allows for you to take a tactical approach. It has chess fan approved, easy to learn, difficult to master gameplay. This game is also super friendly to new players. It is very generous with rewards, including energy, which is how I've been playing for 48 hours straight and still have 400 energy out of a max of 69. Nice. But Zero, you interject. I've played Raid before, and while it is the greatest game ever, I've since moved on to newer ventures. Well, you haven't seen Raid like this. They're still updating the game in major ways, like the new Doom Tower. A giant tower with 120 floors, full of secret challenge rooms and 12 seriously badass bosses to take on. And this thing is a monster. Think you can beat it, Mr. Veteran? If you're a fan of our content, please consider supporting us by downloading Raid Shadow Legends. All you have to do is hit the link in the description to get your free Spirit Champion, 50,000 silver, 50 gems, 5 mystery shards, 1 day XP boost, 1 energy refill, and 1 clan boss key as soon as you get in-game. And if you check your inbox here, you get 30 days of free extra rewards. Thanks again to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. And now, let's get back into One Piece. When we first meet Luffy, he draws in a crowd of pirates eager to see his latest hilarious stunt, only to surprise them when he endeavors to prove his bravery by plunging a dagger into his cheek to give himself a scar. Despite his young age, he's learned that men have scars, and this is his attempt to expedite his maturation. When we meet his idol Shanks, we understand his urgency. Luffy thinks Shanks sees him as a funny kid who can't swim, not a man whose dreams should be taken seriously. And worse yet, he's soon leaving the island for good, intent on leaving Luffy behind despite his boasts of pistol power punches. In come the bitch-ass mountain bandits, if you'll excuse the academic jargon. They try to punk Shanks, and he just brushes it off because he knows if things get real, blood will be spilled, and he's not trying to expose these peaceful townsfolk to that unnecessarily. And yet, to Luffy, Shanks just lets someone disrespect him and walk away. However, this disagreement gets interrupted by the discovery that Luffy has become a rubber man and will never be able to swim. The next day, the bandits return to the pirates' favorite pub, but unluckily for them, they're met with the future pirate king himself. Luffy picks a fight with them and they decide to kidnap and sell him. But Shanks shows up before they get away, and the group of bandits is taken care of effortlessly by his lieutenant, causing the leader to flee with Luffy on a dinghy. As the two quarrel, it's revealed that Luffy started the fight because these guys were talking trash about Shanks and Luffy insisted that they apologize. Luffy gets kicked overboard and is in danger of drowning when the sea monster pops up and eats the boat, passenger and all. Luffy, seeing Shanks has come to save him, is so relieved and moved that he bursts out into tears. His respect for Shanks is deepened, and he accepts that he has to wait for 10 years to be a pirate. But after a flash forward, Luffy sets out on his own journey, and even gets revenge against the sea monster that spooked him years ago with his Gomu Gomu no pistol. An exciting conclusion to a touching chapter. Due to the fact that the more hindsight with which you look back on this chapter, the more you can glean from it, fans of One Piece often remark on how the series gets better. Unwisely, this has turned into fans recommending One Piece generally, solely on the basis that the story does grow. And yet, in this chapter, Oda's penchant for proficient paneling, nuanced dialogue, and most importantly, compelling drama are on full display. I say to you, the strengths of One Piece have already been revealed, and if this chapter doesn't pull you into the story, I implore you to move on with your life because you don't deserve this series. But some of you who have seen, as I have, the way One Piece's meaning gets grander and deeper with each arc may ask how a single chapter can demonstrate the strength of One Piece's narrative. Let's get into it. Game of Thrones, when it was good anyway, frequently uses the trick of a character receiving advice regarding a difficult situation, said character ignoring the advice, and finally being met with terribly tragic consequences for not taking that advice. Don't bring a whore to King's Landing, Tyrion. Don't break your vow to marry Walder Frey's daughter, Robb. Don't let this witch touch the call, Khaleesi. Just keep your mouth shut and this'll all be over soon, Tyrion. This device is utilized in Game of Thrones at about the rate of twice per arc, and its main goal is to reliably set up impactful narrative beats. One Piece utilizes misunderstanding to much the same effect. A character misunderstands a close relation's motivations and judges them. Related character endures it. The misunderstander later learns of the misunderstandee's noble line of thinking. The misunderstander expresses remorse and respect for the misunderstandee. There's also the related but distinct trick which revolves around Luffy. The misunderstandee questions Luffy's intentions, and Luffy says something inspiring. This latter trick has to be included to justify this unhinged maniac being in charge. I'd say we see these tricks employed sparingly, but more than a couple times per arc. We see this formula first utilized with Luffy and Shanks, then with Usopp and Kaya at Syrup Village, then Zeph and Sanji twice at Barity arc, then Nami and the Straw Hats during Arlong Park. I could give even more examples than when I started the script, but I think you get the point. You may be thinking that my acknowledgement of this formula is an indictment of the series. On the contrary, when it first dawned on me, I was quite impressed. I realized this first during Sanji's admission to the Straw Hat Pirates, likely because in this particular case the motivations being misunderstood were unusually transparent. It had already been established that Sanji's cooking was second only to Zeph's, and we've seen enough people join the crew by this point that we've seen how hard it could be to leave one's home for adventure. So watching the scene play out feels a little obvious. But what made it worse is the fact that we're getting the formula twice consecutively with the same characters. And I'll admit, the flashback with Sanji and Zeph was extremely well executed. These two were stranded indefinitely on a deserted rock, and Zeph initially gave Sanji the smaller of the two sacks he was carrying, telling him that would be the boys' food rations. When Sanji complained, he reasoned that he needed more food than a kid did. The two of them had to watch their small rations of food dwindle day by day as they constantly stared out at the sea for salvation. And once that reserve dried up, Sanji suffered the pangs of starvation, and came to know how precious something that many of us take for granted truly is. Food is something so precious that if you didn't have it, you would kill for it. Sanji experienced hunger's power to change a man firsthand when he decided to kill Zeph for his remaining food rations, only to discover that his large sack of food was actually nothing but treasure, rendered useless by their solitude. Zeph was a rich man starving. Sanji was moved by this display of integrity, and considers himself indebted to Zeph even after they've finally been rescued. As a result of this experience, Sanji makes it his duty to serve delicious food to those who are hungry and have nothing to eat. It was genuinely compelling to see the sacrifice Zeph made in such an unimaginably difficult situation. And Sanji's realization that hunger could be such an evil thing that he was going to kill such a selfless man was powerful. But the second moment in comparison is much weaker. Hearing him explain himself to Luffy, I thought aloud, is this the only damn way you know how to communicate, you old buffoon? And it dawned on me that this is the only way anyone in One Piece can communicate, by stubbornly doing what they want or what they believe is right. Because in the real world, that's quite often how people operate. And at first it can seem hurtful, but people's motivations can often surprise us. Oda encourages his audience to admit when we don't know all of the facts, and to view these moments, and the people on the other side of them, charitably. Honestly, it's refreshing to see a shonen series that has more to say about morality than do your best, follow your dreams, cherish your friends. So in truth, I love this formula. But at this point in the story, I was worried that Oda's appeal might be limited to just his thematic soundness, his cool fight scenes, his effective comedy, his impressive foresight, his unique character designs, and clever implementations of his power system. I wondered how he could deliver on the complex, surprising narrative I had been promised by fans of the series while relying on this formula in every arc. And so I trudged along for a while. Don't get me wrong, I was as moved by Laboon as everyone else who's programmed to feel. I love Chopper, and despite knowing it beforehand, it was still heartwarming when they invited him to join the Straw Hats. But it wasn't until after Alabasta that my faith was soundly restored. In Alabasta, it seems like more of the same when we learn Crocodile is manipulating the rebellion against Vivi's father. Surely the king was going to be the misunderstandee, and all the rebels who doubted him would fill the role of misunderstanders. But then, rather than the mistake being cleared up, Crocodile exacerbates it by having one of his henchmen imitate the king and attack the people, confirming their worst fears. And there's this heart-wrenching moment when we learn that instead of vindicating the rebels, this betrayal shocks them. Koza always wanted to believe in the king, and hoped to hear him defend himself, but now he's forced to stand against that king he wished to admire. This has to be the moment in One Piece that hooked me. I occasionally hear talk that an analytical approach to viewing anime can often spoil the experience. You see the foreshadowing and it spoils the story. Poorly constructed stories become impossible to enjoy, while your less critical peers assure you that it's so bad it's good. We've all had moments like these. #relatable. But I depart from the decriers when they place the blame at Analysis's doorstep. While my enjoyment was temporarily spoiled, I now love One Piece more than ever. Although while watching you are aware during the chastisement phase of the trick that the misunderstanding will be cleared up, Oda routinely manages to surprise you with the misunderstandee's true motivation, resulting in these moments still being memorable and impactful. And even when I'm watching with my analysis activated, as it were, in other words without my brain turned off, this story and its colorful cast can still sweep me away and make me forget to think. It's pointless to blame analysis. It's something we all do passively and can't stop doing. In fact, you know who's also analyzing the story as it develops? The author. Oda's awareness of this cycle was made clear by Water 7. In this arc, while the crew is split up, it's discovered that the Going Merry is damaged beyond repair. Luffy is initially outraged at the idea of having to abandon the ship that's carried them this far, but is chastised for his childishness, and confronted with the fact that sticking with his ship will inevitably kill his crew. No responsible captain could justify keeping the Going Merry, even the most sentimental. But importantly, Usopp isn't here in this moment. When they do meet up later, Luffy is determined that abandoning the Going Merry is the only option. But this decision outrages Usopp. He claims it's because the Going Merry is an invaluable friend, a sentiment Luffy shares, but that's not enough to sway Luffy. Despite what he says, it's clear that Usopp feels that the ship is an allegory for his own membership of the crew. Just before this, Usopp had most of the Straw Hat's money stolen from him by a gang of muggers. But it isn't just the timing. Unlike the other members of the crew, almost all of whom are reliable in a fight, Usopp is not an integral member. He has no role or job on the crew that must be performed, and he can't defend himself. If Luffy is prepared to abandon the Going Merry because it prevents him from moving forward, then the day could come when he does the same to Usopp. Luffy thinks that Usopp is being stubborn. In reality, Usopp knows that the Going Merry is beyond repair, but metaphorically it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, none of this is said. The disagreement breaks out into an argument, and Luffy tells Usopp to leave if he doesn't like his decisions. Usopp decides to leave the crew and fight Luffy one-on-one. The winner decides the fate of the Going Merry. He puts up a good effort, but of course he ultimately loses, and the Straw Hats leave without him. I was amazed. A believable disagreement realistically escalated into an impassioned shouting match, which graduated into a fight. While we would expect them to butt heads and back off to let the air clear for the sake of their friendship, instead the two both stick to their guns, not allowing the misunderstanding to be cleared up, and we see immediate consequences as a result. I knew this fight was going to happen, and I was still shocked by how masterfully it was pulled off. Regardless of how much you're prone to analyze content to death, you only put yourself in danger of revealing what media is truly special. Hoodie has recently informed me that most people are introduced to One Piece through the anime. I truly do not understand humans. Thank you all for listening to my dumb rants, particularly our lovely patrons like Ethan Fecker. Everyone in our Discord server is annoyed by the frequency with which I post random pages from whatever manga I'm currently reading, and you can join that team by pledging as low as $1 at patreon.com/KatoYT. Join us. Assimilate.